Welcome to Geopolitics Demystified. I'm your host, S.L. Canthan. Today we have a fascinating guest from Beirut, Lebanon. He's Laith Marouf, and we're so happy to be with him. And we'll be talking about Gaza, the Middle East, and all sorts of geopolitics. Welcome, Laith.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be with you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, the journalism, the activism, and all the stuff you do?
Yes, I am half Palestinian, half Syrian, if you can be half something. And I lived in Canada for almost 30 years, so I am a citizen of Canada. And during my time there, I was doing a lot of media work, and my career took me from publishing, written, to radio, to television, and finally to a consultancy on broadcasting law, specifically for the rights of racialized communities and indigenous communities. And I moved to Beirut 6 years ago, and I've been lately, since this war on Gaza, since the genocide on Gaza started, I launched this project called Free Palestine TV. You can find us on the website of freepalestine.video, and we have all the socials on Twitter, Telegram, YouTube, Rumble.
Wow, the video just froze. Okay, sorry. I mean, the video just froze for a second, but it's now okay.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we're producing content from the front, showing people what's happening on the border between Lebanon and Palestine in English, because there's nobody that's doing that. And we are also translating all the videos of the resistance that are coming out from Palestine, from Lebanon. For instance, we translated the Hudhud video, the surveillance videos that Hezbollah just released. The first one was covering the zones around Haifa, and yesterday they released another one that showed us all the Israeli bases in the Syrian Golan Heights. So we produce translations, reports from the front, and interviews with personalities here. Again, you can watch us, find all our socials on freepalestine.video.
Sorry about that. There is some background noise. Oh my God.
Background noise from me? Okay.
Yeah, so there is some, the construction work going on. My God. Okay. So hopefully the people can chop this out later on. Okay. So you said you're half Syrian, half Palestinian. So, well, is it too personal, or but can you share with us your family background, if they were like part of the Nakba and...
Yes, my mother's family are the Kelani family. They're originally from Nablus, but they were in Haifa in 1948. In April 21st and 22nd, the Zionists of 1948, they ethnically cleansed Haifa and expelled the Palestinian inhabitants of the city. My mother's family were part of that wave of expulsion. My grandmother was pregnant with my mother, and they put them on a truck and threw them on the border with Lebanon. And when she entered the village of Bint Jbeil, right on the border, my grandmother gave birth to my mother there. So my mother is born in Lebanon, but her actual documents don't say that, because at the time, Lebanon was governed by a tool of the West. And what they did is they gave citizenship to the Palestinian Christians, but Palestinian Muslims were refused citizenship in Lebanon. So my grandfather was a businessman. He had a lot of trade partners in Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan that owed him money. So he managed to travel with his family in a big U-turn all the way back to Jordan. And they were given citizenship there. And so my mother's document doesn't say her real birthplace. It says she's born in Amman, Jordan. And she ended up having Jordanian citizenship. It doesn't even say her true birth date. So you could imagine, how this is a common reality for many Palestinians that lived the Nakba. One last story that I can tell you about the Nakba. My great uncle, my oldest uncle, who passed away also, after they were expelled to Lebanon, him and his two cousins decided to sneak back into Palestine to try to get some of their belongings, some of their money that they have around the country. And as they were, going back to Haifa, they got spotted by the Haganah, the Zionist militia, and they got shot. The three of them got shot. My uncle had put his hand in front of his body and face, and his hands got shot. And his two cousins, one of them was immediately martyred on the spot. The other was breathing out of a hole in his chest from and making noise. So my uncle played dead, and he tried to tried to actually help his cousin not make noise. But when the troops arrived, they shot his cousin in the head, and they thought that he was dead, so they didn't shoot him. So he stayed there until the nightfall, and then he crawled to a Palestinian village that wasn't ethnically cleansed, and they hid him for around 6 months. So my mother's family didn't know if he was dead or alive for 6 months, and then he ended up showing up in Jordan, being able to escape, and that's the story that was told over and over in my family, and that's again a story that many Palestinians lived in 1948.
Wow. Yeah. The truth about the Nakba is never really shared with the world. Most people around the world, they don't know what happened in 1948 and the process by which the land of Israel was created. And the Zionist, the terrorist groups, like the one you mentioned, so there were like three terrorist groups, and many of the people from those terrorist groups, they went on to become generals and the prime ministers of Israel, and nobody knows about that. And then they just keep talking about Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Wow, it's really unbelievable. And then, where did your parents meet?
Well, they met in Damascus. They were both studying at the University of Damascus. My father was studying English literature, and my mother was doing accounting. And the late 1960s, early 70s was a lot of student movements and radicalism happening, and they got involved in radical revolutionary work, and that's how they fell in love and got married actually in the middle of the 1973 war. My mother was promised to one of her cousins when they were kids. How the old days it was, and my mother called my dad, and she was like, "You gotta come now and marry me before anything happens." So he ended up crossing the Syrian Jordanian border in the middle of the war, and getting married to my mother. So this is, war, love, family. This is a story here. It's been 100 years in our region that we haven't seen really a day of peace
Mm.
since the creation of this Zionist colony and the Balfour Declaration and World War One. Many people, don't understand outside our region how we're almost like frozen in this moment of Sykes-Picot and the Balfour Declaration. It's almost like in India, how 1948 is a moment that we're still living, India, Pakistan, and the partition and the huge movements of people. And, so these colonial realities that came at the end of World War One and World War Two, us in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are still struggling to move beyond them. And it's clear that the only way that we can move forward from these points is the true end of Western hegemony and imperialism and a rise of multipolarity and independence, so we can, heal these wounds that our peoples have lived.
Yeah, I mean, we have all the science and technology for the Israelis and Palestinians to coexist and to have their own states and to have prosperity and, proper cities and just live a normal life. There's absolutely no reason why there has to be, Palestinians have to live without a land and a state and just have to undergo just brutal. Uh, there's a lot more than just genocide, right? I mean, they have to suffer on a day-to-day basis so much humiliation and violation of all the basic rights to humanities. Like the Americans love to talk about the Bill of Rights, like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, the due process, blah blah blah, and the Palestinians have to live with none of those.
Yes, we can't have any of these things, not only in the historical land of Palestine, but anywhere in the West. Palestinians are hunted basically in the West. There's, all these freedoms and rights that you mentioned have now been exposed as just ink on water. In fact, although many of the citizens in the West had some of these rights, even them, other than, even if they're not Palestinians, they're losing now those rights, as we see countries like Germany banning the upside down red triangle, or seeing how Meta right now announced that using the word Zionism is hate speech. I mean, can you imagine saying the name of a political ideology makes it hate speech? So what we see right now is that the whole West is being turned into a Zionist theocracy, right? So it's now becoming the official religion of the West is Zionism. You can criticize and make fun of any prophet on this, in human history. You can desecrate any religious book, even Judaism and Jewish holy books, or make fun of Moses, but you cannot criticize the state of Israel and the political ideology of Zionism. This is now it's considered heresy. You're hounded out of your work. Your livelihood is destroyed. You're purged from public life. You could even end up in jail, as in the situation that is now developing in Germany. So we're clearly right now the fate of the Palestinian people and the rights or that Palestinians don't have will be now the fate of every citizen in the West, as the minute they open their mouth on Palestine, and it doesn't matter their religious, cultural, linguistic background, even white Christian or white secular people, if they open their mouth on Palestine, could be expunged from public life by the Western states.
Yeah, yeah, it's really shocking. I've never seen such, I mean, it's just blatant oppression and things just, we're just watching the genocide like it's some sort of I mean, the reality show. And the whole world is just watching, and we cannot even speak about it openly. There are so many words and phrases that we have to be careful to not to use to offend the people. It's so dystopian. It's just unbelievable.
Oh yes, oh yes, and I mean, I feel it's just going to get worse, because right now we have been desensitized to the genocide. We've watched it for 9 months, day in, day out, watching every day videos of tens of children chopped up into pieces, burnt alive. Every day watching, hospitals being destroyed. And even that anger that people had in the beginning, now we're desensitized to it. And, this is why I think, in a way, I personally, on all this social media, I never share these images, not because I don't want people to know what's happening to the Palestinian people, but because I don't want to desensitize the viewer. Also, look at what we are doing in Free Palestine TV. We're producing and sharing the resistance videos to give, energy and impetus for people to understand that we can resist. Yes, there's a genocide, but there is also a military battle that Israel is losing and the West is losing. And this is why they are acting out in these ways of mass killings of civilians as revenge to their failures on the battlefield.
Mm. So, stepping back, why do you think the Gaza war started? So is this a part of a bigger geopolitical plan? Because to me, it seems like Netanyahu and his group were just waiting for this opportunity. And I even have the hunch they somehow sort of made it happen or let it happen so that they can do what they have been really waiting to do. It's sort of like you will let the door open in your house and you let some people come in so you can actually murder them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's very plausible that the intelligence services of the Zionist colony knew that there was an attack coming. But I think they didn't realize how big it was going to be. The resistance in Palestine didn't even inform the rest of the axis of resistance. They were also surprised on October 7th. So it's probable that Israel had a whiff of what's going to happen, or like that there will be an action. They just didn't know how big it was and how complex it was and how successful it was going to be. Maybe they would have liked that Hamas, comes out and attacks one base, and then they can have a field day of destruction in Gaza. But to have 12 Israeli military bases that include the elite units of the Israeli military that include the major Mossad, Shabak military intelligence base in the south of historical Palestine, that include the elite of the police forces. All of these bases were taken over by the resistance groups, Hamas and Islamic Jihad and others, and 11 generals that are the most, that have the most history and knowledge of the war with the Palestinians were all either killed or captured on that day. So, yes, maybe the Mossad knew that there was something going to happen. Maybe they let it happen, but definitely they didn't know how big this action was going to be on October 7th and how successful it was going to be. And this is what prompted the Israelis to conduct the Hannibal doctrine to basically kill their own, because the resistance was so successful. It had captured hundreds of Israeli military and police officers and colonists from some of the colonies that fell to their control. And that number, if they were all taken into Gaza, would have been a disaster to the Zionists. There would have been, close to 3,000 prisoners of war that the Palestinians would have captured. And that's why we saw the Israelis go ape wild and fire on anything that's moving around the border with Gaza, and killed their own citizens and officers in order for them not to be caught and become prisoners of war.
So, what is the final goal of Israel? Do they want to permanently push the people out of Gaza and maybe use Gaza for natural gas or something like that? What is it that they want? What will Gaza look like, say, 6 months from now?
Yes, I mean, if we analyze what is the strategic goal of the Zionist colony, we'll recognize that the strategic goal of the Zionist colony is permanency for this colony on the land of Palestine. And given the realities on the ground in Palestine, even before October 7th last year, already the Palestinian population that is still inside historical Palestine became a majority for the first time over the last few years, became a majority within the historical borders of Palestine, even with the fact that 3/4 of Palestinians are in exile in refugee camps in the region or around the world. So when you put these two things together, you realize that if Israel didn't conduct a new genocide campaign and or expelled a new wave of Palestinians, that the Zionist colony was going to cease to exist just with the birth rate of the Palestinians. And already we heard, of course, all around the world, so many states and movements and unions and students, all of them calling Israel an apartheid state prior to October 7th. It was becoming the norm of that everybody agrees on around the globe. So it was clearly the clock was ticking, the collapse was coming, the end of this apartheid colony was written on the wall. So ultimately, today, the only way that Israel can maintain its strategic goal of permanency is through genocide and mass expulsions. And we are seeing that playing out right now in Gaza, at least the genocide part, because the mass expulsion has not been accepted by its neighbors and or by the West. So we see them conducting this Holocaust. And according to the Lancet, the numbers that we just saw come out yesterday, it's at least 186,000 Palestinian civilians killed in Gaza. It's more probably that it's over 250,000 meaning 1 out of 10 are dead, and at least 1 out of 2 are injured. So we're talking about 1 million injuries, 200,000 somewhat dead. These are numbers that there is no other match to them in terms of percentage of population killed or injured in any battlefield since World War II. So, we are seeing a Holocaust. It's beyond a genocide right now.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. How the world is just watching this happen, and like we had things like, the ICC and the ICJ. They speak out, but they have no power. And so, why do you think that all these the Arab countries, the Muslim countries around Palestine, they're just so powerless and weak, and they don't even, would dare to impose just basic sanctions on Israel, and they're just watching it.
Unfortunately, it's a very sad situation for most of the Arabic people because their governments are all puppets, vassals of the West. There was, at the end of World War II, a wave of revolutionary, sovereigntist, unificationist movements in the region, like the Syrian Social National Party in the late 30s and early 40s, that were, assassinated and killed by the French and British occupation here. That thought was about unifying the Levant, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Iraq. And then we had a wave of Arab unificationist thought with Jamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt. And there was a momentary unification with Syria that, and it so ended with a CIA coup in Syria. And of course, in the West, on purpose, in order to thwart unification in the Arabic world and or modernity, fed the rise of the Wahhabi death cult in Saudi and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt as a counterweight to the progressive, socialist, modernist, unificationist thoughts that were at the time. And, unfortunate for the Arabic people, Abdel Nasser died, and the Wahhabi death cult and the Muslim Brotherhood actually won this battle up until, as we saw right now, with the return of these ideals and the rise of resistance groups and the democratization of military technology that we see that is actually driving this. Suddenly now we have groups like Hezbollah that are not a state but can have technology of drones and missiles that can compete with the jets and aircraft carriers of the West, and that's now where we see the kind of a revival of this idea of unifications. Look, if Palestine is liberated today, not only does Israel cease to exist as a state, but Lebanon will cease to exist as a state. Syria, Jordan, even without anything, like, can you imagine where the moment that Palestine is liberated, the millions of people that are going to cross the border from Lebanon, Palestinian refugees and others that are just going to want to go see Palestine and or do the same thing in Jordan, who's going to bring these people back, right? Psychos-Pico will collapse. The liberation of Palestine will take us to a unificationist, configuration region, no matter what. And this is already, look at how this is inspiring and rising new movements across the world of unification. Look at what's happening in the Sahel with Mali, Niger, and
Niger.
Burkina Faso, and this is going to happen around the world. Again, this is the only way path forward to end the history of imperialism and colonialism in our region.
Wow, wow. Okay, so I never thought of that. So you're saying that if Palestine succeeded, maybe Syria and Lebanon might actually merge?
Yes, the whole region for sure will merge if Palestine is liberated.
Wow, that is really fascinating. I hadn't thought about that. Interesting. Okay, so maybe, yeah. So then I can see why these leaders, they don't want actually Palestine to succeed. Oh my God. Interesting. Okay. So now, what is the situation with Lebanon? Because I see all these the Israeli leaders and generals, they talk just like totally absurd things, and like they have genocidal languages. Like one guy I just saw on social media, he's like, we want, the total annihilation of Lebanon. What are they talking about? These people are just mad. What do you think is
Oh,
going to happen?
oh yes. I mean, they have been threatening Lebanon since day one of this battle. And we've heard almost every month, at least one Israeli official say, we're ready, we have all the plans, and we're going to, attack Lebanon and bring it back to the Stone Age, or we're going to do what we're doing to Gaza, to Beirut. That's every month, every month. And, the first time, the second time, you're worried. But then you look at what's happening on the battlefield and you realize actually Hezbollah is winning. It's actually Israel that's scared of attacking Lebanon. For these videos that I just mentioned earlier that we translated, shows you that Hezbollah, its drones, can penetrate any part of historical Palestine without being caught or shut down, can bring you 4K video of the most detailed parts of the most sensitive sites in the Israeli military or the Israeli military industry complex, as we saw the Rafael factories in Haifa in the first video of the Hudhud. So, and of course, the military drones and missiles that Hezbollah is using are all hitting their targets. The Iron Dome has been shown to become the paper dome. And Hezbollah destroyed much of all of the intelligence gathering sites that the Israelis have in the north of Palestine, or maybe in the first few months of this war, and now is hitting the second line and third line bases all the way to the southern parts of Tabariya Lake, or the Sea of Galilee, as it's called in English. So much of historical northern Palestine, the Galilee and the Golan Heights that have been taking the brunt of much of the attacks of Hezbollah, are now ripe for invasion. In a situation of a full-out war with Lebanon, as the former Israeli chief of staff and former Israeli head of the Mossad said, Hezbollah will take most of the Galilee in the first 24 hours. And if Hezbollah takes the Galilee, that means they reach the West Bank. And then the only thing that's really left of the Zionist colony is a small stretch of beachfront between Haifa and Tel Aviv, and that is not it or a land that you can defend in a military battle. So why would the Zionists be threatening now to do it again? Why would they do that? It's because they are losing their battle on the ground in Gaza. They're losing their battle against Hezbollah in the air in the north, and they're losing their battle against Ansarullah in Yemen in the sea. The only thing that they have left is the ability to drag the West into this war. If this war continues without the West intervening in it directly, there will be no more Zionist colony. And this is why I think, given that Netanyahu is going to go to the US at the end of the month and speak in front of the Congress and so on, he's probably going to come back with an approval to start a war with Lebanon, with a guarantee that the US is going to come and save Israel from itself as it's collapsing. And, that's where I think it's going to go.
Wow. Just mad people trying to start World War III. And they can't even win in Ukraine. And now they're trying to start something in the Middle East. And then there's a whole bunch of people in the US who fantasize about starting a war with China. These people are like totally demented. They want to kill the entire humanity. Unbelievable. Wow.
Yes, and they play together. The Zionists, their strategic goal is permanency as a colony, while the American imperialists, their strategic goal is hegemony and to stay as the only hegemon on this planet. So these two things go together. It's not like the Zionists control the Western politics or something like that. It's actually that Western politicians, in order to maintain their hegemon status, need Israel to exist so it can, destabilize this whole region and for the West to have control of the resources and the transportation and communication lines that are, very important in this region. So, while the Democrats want to start a war with Russia and the Republicans want to start a war with China, both Democrats and Republicans want to kill all all the Arabs in this region. So they agree on something, and this is why we see actually Russia and China becoming more and more public in their position in support of Palestine and the liberation of Palestine, because it is in their interest that the West also is embroiled in the battlefield here instead of on the front lines with China or Russia.
Yeah, and from China's point of view, they really don't want wars, because they run on business. They want the seaports to be running. They want the railways to be running. They want the Sunnis and the Shiites to get along, so they can bring in the Chinese trains, the Chinese ships, and their vision is business, and business likes stability, and business likes prosperity. And as somebody said, China's business is business, and the Americans' business is war.
Yes, and there's where maybe it will help people understand this concept of capitalism. Most people that don't read these things imagine it to be just exchange of money, and then like surplus
labor, whatever,
labor and so forth, and then they start trying to label China as a capitalist state. But in reality, the cornerstone of capitalist economy is the expunging of the highest amount of capital you can through genocide. Because when you genocide people, you're taking somebody that took 30 years to become a specialist in something and then just ending their life and wasting all the investment and capital that was put into this human being. And then, so the expunging of capital as the fastest possible way, and the accumulation of capital at the fastest possible way through colonialism and the the extraction and looting of those lands that you just ethnically cleansed and genocided. So this is the cornerstone of Western economy for the last 600 years. It is not doing business or selling products or so on. No, it is genociding people and looting their resources. That's the main cornerstone of Western economy, and that is capitalism. On the other hand, China is not looting anybody. China is not genociding anybody. It is making normal business, is building products, is using the resources of its own human labor. It's not taking slaves from somewhere else and buying cheap labor in a different country to manufacture something. So that is why the West is scared of China, because China has achieved more than the whole West combined economically in the last 60 years without colonizing, genociding any nation on this planet. And the West cannot compete with that. It's clear that right now, without more genocides, without more looting of other people's resources, the West cannot maintain its rise and economic development. They're addicted to genocide and colonialism.
Yeah. And they have like an economy that is totally fluff. They cannot, they lost all the manufacturing because they're all run by the Wall Street finance types who are like, hey, we can just print money. We can just print trillions of dollars. So why need to work? Why need to manage all these factories? Just send manufacturing abroad, and we will have an America that does Netflix and Zoom and all these, fluff software type that takes very few workers, but you have a huge margin, a profit margin, and then they can always just manipulate the stock market. So, like you have the U.S. stock market is $50 trillion, but they have the homeless people everywhere. And half of all Americans don't even have $1,000 in the bank. They're just broke. And it's just a very predatory system. And they just lack the humanity. And you never see them like reach out for diplomacy. Like you don't see them saying, hey, so let's bring Ukraine and Russia together. Let's bring the Palestinians and the Jews together. No, they just would thrive on conflict.
Yes, and they have swallowed their own propaganda. When you repeat over and over in all your news channels and all your movies and all your music that we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, best nation on earth, the shining light on top of the hill, whatever it is. I mean, you start believing your own lies, okay? And it becomes hard for you to actually realize the reality that's playing out in front of you. I mean, and if you start realizing it and you still believe that you're the past, the supreme, the whatever it is, the end of history, then you get angry and want to, break people's heads for them to admit that you are the best. So there's this that's playing out. And, obviously, there's a big difference between the elite in the West and the people in the West that are as good and as bad as every other human being. There's nothing specific, but we hope that the citizens of these countries start waking up because their elite are dragging them into conflict with the rest of humanity. And it's not going to be something that is nice for even them as one of these countries.
Yeah, and they really don't, I look at all these, supposedly smart journalists and pundits and think tanks in the US, And then you see them like working for like very, famous institutions. And they have no idea what is happening in the world and the truth about the world. And like you said, that they believe their own lies. And that happens even at the very top. And that's why, for example, they totally misunderstood the capability of uh, Russia. And they thought, oh, so, if we just place sanctions on them, the Russian economy would just collapse because so how can anybody in the world survive without America and Europe? And then we can just do a regime change in Russia, get rid of Putin, and then we bring in a puppet, and then that puppet can easily help us defeat China, and then we will rule the world, and we will make the children all over the world will sing the LGBTQ songs. I don't know, whatever. And they totally misunderstood, how popular Russia is and how resilient the global South is, and how the rest of the world. We don't really want to do anything to do with the U.S., I mean, I look at America, yes, like there are some positive things and, so maybe like going back, if you read, so if I read like the American history from the 17th, 18th century, I can see some really smart people from, smart presidents, philosophers, blah, blah. But now I see it's like totally a garbage culture, a garbage music, garbage food. The only thing is like the technology, so they have, they're doing a good job. But the overall, the contribution of the U.S. to the rest of the world, I don't understand what's good that's coming out of that country.
Yeah, I mean, look, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I mean, they had a chance. They could have ruled the world then, and they squandered it, right? Because their strategy was like, can you imagine if they attacked Russia and China then instead of now? Russia wouldn't have been ready. China would have been not ready. But what they did instead is that they decided to go after every country that escaped colonialism and succeeded after World War II, like Libya, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Venezuela, whatever you have. So they were trying, they were going for what they thought is the low-hanging fruit, right? Before they go to the big two. And what ended up happening is that they got bogged in the sands of the Arabic world. The Arabic world, the Arabic people are stubborn people, right? if you look at what the Yemenis are doing, I mean, look at what the Palestinians are doing. They're under genocide and they're refusing to surrender. This is the hard-headedness of the Arabic people that is keeping them going. Otherwise, any other people would have been surrendered long time ago. And so they got stuck in the quicksands of the Arabic world. Alhamdulillah, luckily, actually, for all of humanity, that the Arabic people are this crazily stubborn and refuse to be defeated. Because if they would have rolled through us, they would have been at the doors of Russia 20 years ago. If they so in a way, the blood of the Arabic people, including the Palestinians, has been liberating for the rest of humanity. Can you, if there was no war in Iraq, that the Americans were bogged in Iraq and Afghanistan, there wouldn't have been the pink wave in Latin America, right? If there isn't what we're seeing now happening, there wouldn't be the rise of the Sahel. So every time the Arabic people stand stubborn and get massacred, the West has to send all its resources to this front, then another region escapes from their control. And this delay allowed China to build itself to this point, allowed Russia to recuperate from the Yeltsin years, right? And so, let's look to the forward to the future. Hopefully, with the liberation of Palestine, the unification of peoples like the Arabic people, that there will be China and Russia and the rest of humanity will come together in this multipolar world with the new India, hopefully, that can make Asia a Garden of Eden on this planet, a peaceful place that is fortified from any colonial machinations.
Wow, that's really a beautiful thought. And we need a vision like that. Because a vision, a view, a positive, motivating view of the future is what gives the human beings the energy to get up in the morning and to do something. So we need a positive vision like that, and it's good to know that there is a possibility. Wonderful. All right. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to share about what is happening in the Middle East? And so where people can find you, follow you?
Yes, so that you can find us on Twitter at TV Free Palestine. We have a lot of other socials on Telegram, on YouTube, Rumble. You can find all of that information on our website, freepalestine.video. I encourage everybody to donate or subscribe so we can cover some of the costs. I just want to say, the reporting from the south, from the border, is very dangerous. 2 days ago, we were in the south of Lebanon, 3 days ago, sorry, and in the Marjayoun region, and the Israeli military fired a white phosphorus shell and a Hellfire missile just beside our team. We were lucky that there was a wall that protected us from the shrapnel. But it was clear that we were being targeted. There was nobody else around us. There's no other cars. It was an open field. So, this work is important. And I encourage people to help us continue this work by donating. And I encourage people to help independent media producers around the world, like you also, because the voices of reason are coming from outside the mainstream media, and work like Free Palestine TV or your work is enlightening a lot of people and making it harder and harder to fool the masses.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for your time, Laith, and we will pray for you, and we hope the best for you, and we hope to speak with you in the future as well.
Thank you very much, SL. So I hope to see you too again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.